Hey, hello. How you doing, everyone? Okay, my name's Anthony. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm just gonna start off by giving a brief little introduction about my background and how I got into the work that I'm doing. I started collecting plants from a very young age. I grew up in New York City. When I was about 10, 11 years old, I started to collect carnivorous plants, and this was my introduction into the world of botany. And from there, fast forward to high school, I started to carry around an old film camera, which sparked my love for photography and everything visual from there on. I also started to work into news. I worked for a news station editing live TV, which also introduced me into the world of film, hence me being a filmmaker. So this is just an image from my first expedition, which was in the Amazon, where we were looking for rare fruits. And the study of ethnobotany is something that's been of interest for me for over a decade. And if you don't know what ethnobotany is, it's the study of the relationship between people and plants. Ethno meaning people and botany meaning plants. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of journey, a bit of photos showing some of the rare, interesting fruits that I've already documented. This is a canarium fruit that you can find old growth trees growing in the Solomon Islands and other parts of Melanesia. This is the Himba tribe from northern Namibia. Working with local peoples is very important to the work and learning from them as well. This is a very rare mango that grows in Malaysian Borneo. There's another interesting fruit. This is a Hedonora africana, which is a parasitic plant that parasitizes acacia trees in northern Namibia, and it's also used as a food and a desert food. Another desert fruit that's related to cucurbits or cucumbers or squash or anything in that family. It's a narmelon that grows deep in the dunes of Namibia. Another cool fruit from the Amazon forest, this is Grias nubertii. You can see it grows on the stem of the trunk of the plant. And it tastes very similar to a crunchy carrot. This might look familiar to some people. This is actually a watermelon. This is the ancient ancestor of the watermelon that we know today. This is also growing in southern parts of South Africa and Namibia. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that I document. Another cool plant. This is a Telferia, aka the African fluted melon, and it's also in the cucurbit family. And it is eaten. They eat the seeds, and it tastes very much like oysters. Some people call it the oyster nut. But today I'm here to talk about the banana, and I want to kind of prod your mind to think about why is the banana such a relevant fruit in modern day. And I want to start with this video here.
Skyrocketed to universal recognition when it was first exhibited at the Art Basel Miami Beach in December 2019. Maurizio Catalan's comedian. Here it is in all its splendor, returned in full force to our galleries here in New York. We are excited for its auction debut this evening. And with that, we're going to begin at $800,000, at $800,000, $850,000. Only at Sotheby's. These are words I never thought I'd say. $5 million for a banana. It's your expensive banana, Jen, and the hammer is coming up. This is it. Fair warning. At $5,200,000. Jen, the Catalan is yours. Congratulations. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, so how did this forest plant become a global empire fruit? I'm just going to give a very brief history of how the banana became popular in the West. Bananas were actually brought to the island of Hispaniola very early in colonization of the West, and it was used as a food crop for African slaves at that time. And it wasn't until, the turn of the 19th century where Victorian women actually began to eat bananas, and it became a popular fruit in Cuba and southern Florida. And then it was brought to the north, places like New York, where the banana was sold as a hot commodity by what is known as the United Fruit Company. which fueled a huge industry, which is now the fruit industry. We wouldn't have banana aisles or fruit industry if there wasn't for this first fruit. There was so many people eating banana in the States that the streets were loaded with bananas and people were slipping on them, which began the satire of people slipping on bananas. The United Fruit Company ended up turning into Chiquita, a little bit of rebranding, and the banana has continued to permeate our culture, being in our art and cartoons, and you just name it, it's everywhere. So this is a big question for me. Is like, why was it a banana and not any other fruit? Why wasn't the banana, for example, sold for $6 million, a pineapple, an apple, or any other fruit? And this is what really drove me to dive into the world of bananas. This is Banana Tour Intro, Take One. In the beginning of 2019, I began a world expedition to focus on photographing bananas of the world. Yeah, so we just found two species in this tiny little island. And this entails wild species, cultivars, the plant, cultural uses, and many other things. The banana itself is a very interesting fruit because it's something that is very close to home. It's in the fruit bowls of people all over the world. On this journey, I visited places like India, Hawaii, and even the Solomon Islands. This particular project is something that has a very deep meaning and I'm very passionate about. Bananas was chose for the theme because of its history, origin, mysteriousness, and its intertwined journey with human beings. So my objective is to introduce the average person to the vast knowledge, diversity, and humanity's relationship to the world of bananas. It's an ongoing series, so I'll be sharing videos, never before seen images, and stories of my journey. So come on a journey with me into a familiar but obscure world. Okay, I always like to start my lectures off with a question to the audience, and I want to ask you a question, a couple of questions. How long have bananas been on Earth? If you just give an answer, some people say 10,000, some people say 10 million. The answer is over 50 million years. Bananas have been present on Earth for over 50 million years. They're actually related to gingers. They're in the order of Zingiberales. And they're related to gingers and cannas and turmeric and things of that nature. How long have humans been cultivating bananas? Ten to 12,000 years. Bananas is actually one of the earliest cultivated foods. Some of the earliest archaeological studies found in Papua New Guinea that humans have been cultivating bananas for up to 12,000 years. How many times does a banana plant produce fruit? One time. The plant is monocarpic, which basically means it produces a flower one time. You get the fruit from that main stem, and then you get lateral shoots coming from the corm, which continues the production of the plant. And where do bananas comes from, and what did their ancient ancestors look like? Wild ancestors. So this is a map of Oceania, or the Pacific Ocean, and it's broken up into three different regions. You have Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia, and you can also see Southeast Asia. And this map basically shows a migration, the human patterns of migration. And with humans, we bring plants with us, especially staple plants like the banana, sweet potato, taro, and things of that nature. And it shows, if you can see in the purple, this is a diversity hotspot for bananas. This is where the ancient humans of Papua New Guinea actually started to cultivate the wild banana, and creating a new world of diversity for this plant. This is a typical Musa acuminata, which is one of the ancient ancestors or ancient parent species for the banana that we know today. This is just a bit of the structure. You have the fruit, you have the flower, you also have the peduncle or the stem that holds the male flower bud. and then the small flowers that comes along with that. So my journey begins in Hawaii, and Hawaii is a very interesting place to begin because bananas are not present in Hawaii, but they're not native to Hawaii, but they've been present on the island for over 2,000 years. So they are brought there by seafaring Polynesians as a staple food, and many, many varieties basically evolved in this isolated island in the Pacific. This is a typical view of a valley in Hawaii. This is actually Waipio Valley, and you can just see how crazy the terrain looks. This is what you would call a banana corm. This is what's planted, and you can see the tags is just various indigenous varieties. But this is what the root of the plant would look like when you're planting a banana. But I went to Hawaii to basically photograph a very rare banana that I waited 2.5 years to flower. And a friend of mine was growing this, and he's actually growing some of the last plants in the world. And his goal was to actually preserve and save this particular variety. It's an ancient cultivar, which is indigenous and native to the island of Tahiti, and it went extinct in Tahiti in the early 20s. And it's called Feihi potea. The Feihi bananas is a group of bananas that have been cultivated in the Pacific Islands, and you can mostly only find these particular group of bananas in those regions. This is what the stem looks like. When you cut the stem, it actually bleeds a purple sap, which is a very unique trait, which you will see later on why that is also important. But this is the fruit. The fruit looks like a mango, about the size of a mango, and it's cut in half, and it tastes like custard. I can actually relate it to the taste of pawpaw or crossed with a very ripe plantain raw. There's a very unique trait about the Feihi types is that they have a massive amount of beta carotene in them. So it actually causes your urine to be the color of antifreeze if you eat enough of them. They're also very heavy. One fruit can weigh up to 1.5 pounds. This is us excavating the variety to save, and you can see we just excavated it and we exposed the roots, and you can see many lateral roots starting to come off of the main stem. And we'll break those off, and then we'll plant them in various parts of the island to save the variety. And this is just a table. You can see a little bit of the diversity just in that one place. You have 4 varieties on this table here. And then the bottom, you can see there's a very old Hawaiian variety that is striped, variegated, which is also known as the royal banana. Here I am on a 14-foot ladder to take a photo of this very interesting Feihi variety. It's called Feihi Ayuri, which is also an ancient Hawaiian cultivar. So this variety is very specific to Hawaii. And my friend is harvesting that bunch. And that bunch probably weighs about 100 to 150 pounds. Very heavy. Here's the fruit. Very beautiful. And the next place we go to is Peninsula Malaysia. So we skip over to Southeast Asia because this is where you will find a native population of bananas. And this is the wild species. These are the wild species that you can find growing deep in the various jungles that have evolved for millions of years in these regions. This is the capital city of Kuala Lumpur, and you can see a jungle ficus, just remnants of the jungle that was once surrounding this major city. So here we have a wild species, the parent strain, Musa acuminata, which is the parent to the Cavendish variety, which is the typical yellow banana that you will find in the store. So you're looking at its wild ancestor. Wild species, they are loaded with seeds. The fruit that we know and eat, they're parthenocarpic, which basically means it produces flesh with a pulpy flesh without seed. So all the species are loaded with seeds. Cool story. We ended up looking for there's 2 wild species in Peninsula Malaysia, and we were looking for one of them, and we basically hitchhiked and The person who had picked us up told us, I know exactly where that plant is. And this is Musa gracilis, and it's an endemic wild species to the Peninsula Malaysia region. One of two endemic species. And you can see here that the jungle flies are big pollinators, and there's also many big pollinators, including birds and bats. So they're very important to the ecology. This is just my hotel room as we prepare to look for another batch of wild species and another diversity hotspot in the world in Borneo. This is Borneo is an ancient island out in the South Pacific Ocean, sorry, in the Southeast Asia, and it's actually being destroyed right now because of oil palm. Um, it's 130 million years old, so it survived the Ice Age, and it's one of the most diverse regions in the world. Orangutans, proboscis monkeys, dwarf rhinos, you can find animals like that in these forests, which are now being destroyed because of oil palm plantations. This is one of the highest mountains in Borneo. This is Mount Kota Kinabalu, where you can find a very interesting wild species called Musa monticola. It's a dwarf species that is a shade dwelling, and it's endemic to this high mountain region. This is another cool banana plant that we found. Um, and I say plant because bananas, some people say trees, but the bananas are a giant herb. So they're a large herbaceous plant. So they are not trees. This is Musa textilis, which is actually native to the Philippines, but it's grown here in Borneo, and it's used to make textile, aka abaca hemp. This is one of my favorite photos. This is Musa acuminata variety microcarpa, which is an ancient relative ancestor to the banana that we know and eat. This is another cool wild banana. This is a swamp-dwelling species called Musa campestris, and it has a very interesting flavor, very sweet. The seeds are not as hard as your typical bananas, and yeah, they just are crazy beautiful, about the size of a big lighter. And this is the flowers of various species throughout that region. You can just see the immense diversity in the flower. Another cool species, this is Musa borneensis, one of the sweetest wild species I've ever eaten. This is what the fruit looks like cut in half and the flower. And then you can just see the amount of sugars present in this banana that it almost peels like caramel. And you can see the black seeds all throughout the fruit. This one has a much larger seed, and there you see my mouth is filled with seeds after chewing a bunch of those. Just a table here of various things that I've collected across my journey on that island. Okay, so this is a very interesting, rare, endemic wild banana, which actually happens to be one of my favorites. The leaves are very remnant of gingers because they droop in that fashion. And it's a wild species called Musa lawantiensis. And the cool thing about this species is that it's the size of a string bean mature. So the bunches don't get much bigger than what you're seeing here. And it only grows in this particular region in Borneo. So an extremely endemic and rare wild species. There's my friend Pete holding about 3 bunches, and you can see a typical banana bunch weighs, over 50 pounds, and he's holding 3 bunches. This is the fruit cracked in half, and you can just see the seeds are about the size of a mustard seed or a sesame seed, very small. We actually tried eating them because we did hear from the locals that the native Iban people of the region used to eat that as a young vegetable. We ended up boiling some up, and it didn't taste too good, but I also didn't think that we approached it the right way, so we might have, I believe they harvest them when they're much younger and green. And these are pretty mature fruits. So Northeast India, I'll take you to Northeast India because Northeast India is another super diversity hotspot for wild species in a place called Arunachal Pradesh, where you can find over a dozen wild species. This is just a scene in the city of Guwahati, and you can see bananas is very deeply rooted in the Hindu culture. And it's a sacred plant as well. This is what a typical street would look like on a busy day, and you can just see massive amount of diversity on the streets of India. The shot was taken in Manipur, the state of Manipur, and this is a bunch of bananas that have just been harvested, ready for the market. Okay, so this is the state of Arunachal Pradesh. This is a northern state. It's bordering Tibet, Bhutan, and Myanmar, and it has a massive amount of diversity, and it's also in the foothills of the Himalayas, and it's just loaded with very interesting subtropical forest bananas. This is what the road looks like going into one of those forests. Very, very nice road. This area is highly protected. I actually needed to get a permit to enter the region for 30 days because it's a tribal area. And there's a bit of a fight with the government to protect these regions. They started to build nice roads because mining companies have some interest in it. But the people there are living very much as they did a very long time ago. This is just a local man riding an elephant. And they produce many very interesting foods, especially rice. And they're fanning the rice here, so they have no machinery. This is a guy I met, and he was the one who took me to see some of the cool varieties growing in this particular region. Cool species. Okay, so we made it across through the jungle, and we've made it to the river here. And our guide is really taking care of us. So this is those are itineraries. Is this itineraries?
Yeah,
Where's my camera?
I have it.
Oh, where? Oh, thank you. So this is a population of Musa itinerans, wild species that just grows adjacent to their village. And while he took us there, he was cutting a bunch of these plants down, which made me wonder, why is he doing that? And
Purple.
completely different. Okay. So this is Musa itinerans, and they're extremely tall. They grow in bunching clumps, so you'll find populations of the plant bunched together. And in this particular tribe, they just let them grow because they harvest the flowers. They don't eat the fruit because the fruit are not tasty and they're loaded with seeds, but the flowers is used and considered a delicacy. This is another cool Northeast Indian wild species, one of my favorites, and it's actually grown around the world as a ornamental now. And it's called Musa valentina, and it's pink, and it's also pubescent, meaning that you can actually feel fur or like hairs on the stem and skin, the peels of the skin. This is what it looks like when it's ripe on the plant. This particular species actually opens when it's ripe. So it's a self-peeling banana. So when it's open, it actually exposes the inner fruit, which attracts birds and bats and other animals to then disperse the seeds. And this is what the fruit looks like when it's broken up in your hands. This is another cool wild species from Northeast India. This is Musa puspanjali. So it's a very cold hardy species. My dream is to actually go back to this region and actually document this plant growing in snow. Another cool wild species called Musa nigensium. And you can see that it has a very interesting formation. And the underside of the leaves is loaded with a pasty starch. I thought that was a very cool trait. Okay, so this is 9 different species across Northeast India. Actually had to put these in a box in the back of the vehicle and put a little ice to basically carry them across the region. So I was able to get them all in one photo. So it's one of my favorite images. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the Pacific, but we're going to go to a chain of islands adjacent to Papua New Guinea called the Solomon Islands. And it's a very interesting place because it's a diversity hotspot, but it's also a point of origin for banana diversity. This is what a typical plane looks like, skipping over to some of the smaller islands. It's actually the sketchiest plane I've ever been on in my entire life. This is what a typical market looks like. This is in the region of the Pacific called Melanesia. And you can see these are Melanesians. It gets that name because these people are obviously very melanated. So visiting the markets, you start to notice very interesting things about this place is that the banana diversity is like no other. I have never been to anywhere in the world where I've seen this many varieties of bananas in one place. So it just shows one thing that these people are basically have a very long relationship with the banana because there's so much diversity that has arisen from this particular region. You can see just in this one image here in the market floor, this woman selling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6 different varieties just in a pile here. This is another cool variety. The bottom part you can see is black, the top yellow. Looked like it was dipped in some black paint. This is another cool variety. The shape is quite interesting because it actually resemblance of a sausage of some sort. It's very, very odd looking. This is another cool variety. This is another Fahey type that you can find throughout the Pacific, but this is one that was found deep in the forest of this island called Makira Island, aka Banana Island. We're here on Savo, the island of Savo, off the northwestern coast of Guadalcanal. Very small island. You can basically walk it in the full day. And we found already 2 species of wild bananas growing on this tiny island. Really incredible. We have Paul and we have Francis, that are guides here from Savo. And yeah, they're showing us in the jungle. Quite amazing. Being in the Solomon Islands was very interesting because these indigenous folks are living very much as they did a very long time ago, as their ancestors did. And this is one of the homes that I stayed in for about a month. It's a traditional thatch roof. And this is what a typical hillside looks like in the Solomon Islands. You'll get thick brush and forest, and then throughout that forest you'll see banana plants popping up through the canopy. So bananas is something that you can just find growing willy-nilly throughout the forest here. This is a close-up of one of those wild plants. So this is the first wild species I came across. This is Musa buchensis. It's a endemic species to the Solomon Islands and Melanesia. And you can see it ripens in various color stages. You go from a dark green to a lighter green to a yellow to a orange yellow to a bright orange and then to a red. This particular fruit is not tasty, but it is very important when it comes to genetics entering some of the other cultivars. And this is what the fruit looks like. It actually reminds me of Skittles, but this is what the fruit looks like in various ripening stages, with the centerpiece being the most ripe. Look at that. Wow. You can make pictures of this stuff. Wow. Musa Macleod. Wow, we found it. So this is Musa macleayi, another wild species. This is Musa macleayi variety erecta. And you can see the plant, it grows directly erect, straight up. This is my friend Francis, who I hope to visit again one day, holding this very interesting wild species. Yeah, one of my favorite wild ones to have come across. This is Musa buccensis, fully ripened, and you can see the stem has turned like a deep, bright, like fluorescent yellow, and the fruit has turned very red. Back to the island of Makira, I go deep into the jungle, and one of the guys I was living with, his name's Job. Um, he said, we have another wild banana growing deep into the mountains. And I said, can you please show me? I would like to go see this. And we ended up walking for about a day and a half to 2 days, deep into the forest. The first day was getting to the isolated village, and after that, deep into the mountains. And we came across a very interesting wild species, and they call it wawe. That's the indigenous word that they used. But he says, yes, this banana grows in the jungle and it's loaded with seeds. Very interesting. And many ants. You can hear the language. Over 90 languages spoken in the Solomon Islands.
Very low. That's Wally. Can you back up more?
That is fucking crazy. So when I came across it, I was like, this one looks different. This looks interesting. The cool thing is that this ended up being a undescribed banana species. Undescribed meaning there is no botanical literature published about this particular species, hence making it a new wild species. This is the fruit, what it looks like when it's cut, and you can see the embryo of the seed split in half. And it also has a very interesting sap, similar to the ones that we saw in Hawaii. This is what the flower looks like. Very, very interesting because it's a full green flower, which just something you don't see often. So I thought that was very beautiful as well. But when you cut the stem, you actually get that deep purple sap, very similar to the Feihi varieties, which indicates that we're in a origin place and looking at an old relative of that particular group of plants, very similar to the Tahitian banana that looked about the same size of a mango. And it's just a good point of notice that you can see that these are one of the places that the ancient ancestors of the ancient seafaring Polynesians and Melanesians took throughout Polynesia, Micronesia, and the other places, carrying the banana far and wide. And this is us holding that particular variety. So, sorry, particular species. So it's just something to really think about when it comes to banana origins, a banana origin story. Okay, so what's next? I still have many places to go. I still have to hit Africa. The plantain evolved in Africa, so that it's a very huge chunk of the story, East and West Africa, and also parts of Ethiopia, where there's a different group of bananas called the enset, and they use that to make a flatbread called kocho. And they ferment it in the ground for up to a year to make a dough. And I still have parts of Southeast Asia and also the Americas. Even though bananas are not from the Americas, they play a very important role in the history. So this is a place I would like to document as well. I recently published a book. It's called Bananas of the World, A First Look, where you can see some of our photography. And you can just check that out. It's very interesting. It's on my website. And if you would like to contact me, here's my contact information, my Instagram, and my website.
we'll start with what you started with, which was the seeds, right? We are so curious about the seeds. Now, we want to know, are these varieties of bananas that are without seeds, like that we have right now, are they hybrids? Because yeah, we've seen we've seen small varieties in the tropics that have no seeds. So
Mhm. Well, hybridization is something that occurs naturally. You will get some wild species that cross with one another, and
mhm.
they would make a hybrid. But what you're looking at mostly, what you in the presentation are very distinct wild species.
Okay, got it. And with that, you showed us a couple of pictures of like the actual seeds and that they are somewhat edible, right? Do you eat them? Because they look really hard.
Some of them are extremely hard, like hard enough to break your teeth. And then you have some species that, like Musa campestris, which was the one that looked like about the same size of a lighter, the purple one.
Mm-hmm.
That particular one was very soft. So
Okay.
it was a very sweet banana. I don't know if anyone have ever chewed frankincense, because frankincense is an antimicrobial. When they chew it and make a gum, it actually, the seeds had that same texture. So it's like chewing bubble gum after a while.
Got it. Oh, wow. Okay. Got it. Now, here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping you're gonna say yes, but maybe you won't. Are all banana fruits edible?
Yes, everything, all parts of the banana plants are edible, and all
Okay.
species of bananas are edible, but they
And
may
when you
not all taste good. Yeah,
ah,
yeah, yeah.
yes. Okay. And thinking about when you talked about it, it kind of tastes like well, similarities of frankincense and things like that. Are the seeds, so could the seeds be used for any purposes medicinally?
That's a good question. I'm not sh particularly sure about the seeds, but there are
Mhm.
other parts of the plant that have been used as medicine for sure.
Okay. Okay. Is that in any reference to I heard that they share 60% of our DNA. That's something that that came up in the chat. Is that something that you've come across?
That is true. They do. They're very much related to humans in some way, but no, I don't know how that would, I don't know how that would tie into, you know, eating.
Yeah. Okay, great. And yeah, it's kind of yeah. Okay, we'll go to the next. We've got to go on to the next question. And thinking about eating them and all parts of them being edible, we have another question. It is common for several Asian cultures to cook food in banana leaves. So they're curious about how common that practice is around the world. And do folks eat any banana leaves as well? Did you come
Um,
across that?
Yes, it's everywhere. You can
Yeah.
find it in Latin America. You can find it throughout the Caribbean. You can find it in Asia. Everywhere where bananas grow, people use them as utensils. They use them as leaves. They use them for all types of things, for cooking. My mother's from Jamaica, and in Jamaica they make blue draws. So it's basically like a cornmeal with raisins, and they wrap it in a leaf and they boil it. So it's
What's it called?
blue draws.
Blue jaws.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
what can you spell it? How is it spelled?
Draws,
Because
like,
like draws in my mind,
yeah.
like I have a couple of ideas of what it is.
Draws,
So
blue draws, or a corn cake.
okay. Okay.
There's other names for it. Some people call it corn cake,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
some people call it dukunu, I believe. Like I have, that's like it's an old word, but yeah.
Yeah. And that is amazing because when we're thinking about like colloquialisms, right? When you're thinking about food coming from different places, there's going to be different names, right?
Yes.
For these different foods and how they're used, and in what season that they're used. And also speaking of seasons, we're wondering about the banana trees bearing fruit. Is there a specific season? Does it change depending on where you are? Like, what are the requirements for it to begin the fruiting process?
Well, banana plants are basically cyclic. So they have a cycle similar to like
Okay.
a butterfly. So they don't really have a particular season, but they
Mm-hmm.
have a cycle. So it's more of an age thing. So when the plant matures to a certain, state, it'll send up a flower. That flower become pollinated. The fruit will form. The fruit will ripen. That main stalk will die, and then other
Mhm.
shoots will pop up, and it'll just continue. It's like a continuous cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And how do I want to take this? Let's just now, I'm going to come back to that, but let's talk about the people in the culture because that's also such a big part of your story, the travel and the people that you've met along the way. So we had some questions about some terms, some terminology. So is it Guineo? And I may be mispronouncing that. Isn't Guineo what the Taino people called them? In Puerto Rico, that's what we call them. That came from the chat. In Puerto Rican Spanish and some other regions, people call bananas guineos.
Yes,
Does that sound
Guineo.
Guineo?
Yeah, yeah. That was actually, and when I was spending a lot of time in DR, that was my nickname,
Ah,
Guineo. And I'm sure it has some indigenous, even though bananas are not indigenous to those regions,
yeah.
maybe that word came from Africa, or maybe it was, what the indigenous people call it when they first saw the plant. I'm not sure of its origins, but it's Guineo. It's very interesting.
Guineo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And you earned the nickname.
yeah.
How cool is that? And and so speaking of nicknames that were earned, maybe not have such a pleasant history, but let's talk about it. Because I know you chatted a little bit about this, that origin of the term banana republic. That
Correct.
idea of the banana republic, not the clothing company, of course, but the political characterization. Can you tell us a little bit more about that term, banana republic?
Well, at the time, the United Fruit Company, which was the dominating force, where basically a conglomerate of like various banana companies came together and they made the United Fruit Company. They wanted to dominate the regions like Panama, Guatemala, and all these places in South America because they wanted to control the
Mhm.
banana. Because at that time, bananas was like oil. It was something
Okay.
that made a lot of income, a lot of money, and they just wanted to have some control over that. So there was some overthrowing of governments and a lot of atrocities that took place in those places, hence getting the name the Banana Republic. I don't want to get too deep into it, but
Mhm.
basically it plays into a bit of colonization and overthrowing of governments and tyranny and things of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That is a big part of this work in conservation, right? Knowing the history of it and then knowing what we want to do going forward. Let's talk a little bit before we get too deeply into conservation. I think we have a couple more questions, maybe about some of the science of
Okay.
it. I know I saw a question about the pollination of it. Let me make sure that I'm asking this question correctly. Okay, the terminal flowers all appear to be tightly budded. This comes from Barbara from the chat. How
Mhm.
does pollination work? And are insects able to get into the flower?
Yes, because when you have that male flower bud, they actually have these sheaths that they basically raise, and then the flowers actually open when they are ready to be pollinated. So it's very
Okay.
accessible to insects and bats and things of that nature.
Yeah, and it seems like that also those characteristics change depending on where we were. Because one of the most fascinating photos I remember seeing was the self-peeling banana. Like when once it was ripe, it kind of opened up for you. So I'm sure evolution has played its part in how the ripening works and how the pollination works as well. All righty, we have some other thoughts here. Um, the gentleman who gave talks pre-COVID, bananas may be very hard to propagate, making it very hard to develop fungus-resistant commercial varieties. But I don't remember why. You had mentioned that hybrids can occur, but can we manipulate them?
Yes, we can
Okay.
manipulate them, and people do.
Okay.
Actually, wild species is very much integrated in creating new varieties, new resistant varieties. And in
Mhm.
terms of propagation, bananas aren't. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy when bringing banana plants to different places because you don't want to introduce funguses and viruses. So the way that banana plants are spread throughout the world in modern times is via tissue culture. And tissue
Okay.
culture is basically the process of taking a small amount of plant tissue and then growing that out in agar and hence cleaning that particular tissue of viruses and diseases that can be like basically contracted by other plants, and that is a way of like keeping the plant clean for shipping new variety. So say I have a farm in Hawaii and I want a particular variety that grows somewhere else. I can't just import that particular banana plant,
Mhm.
just like somebody taking out the ground. I would have to get that from a place that will give us tissue culture, and then we can grow that plant.
Thank you for bringing that up because I think for a lot of us who are not in the plant industry, we just go to the grocery store, we pick up our Cavendish plants, our Cavendish bananas, and we just keep it moving. We don't really pay attention to all that goes into this. Number one, number two, that there's so many other varieties of plants, and we're going to get into why there only seems to be one sold in the U.S. But we'll hold on to that. And we don't really think about the manipulation part, that the way that our bananas taste right now is heavily influenced by what growers have decided this is how a banana should taste. So we're going to hold on to this process, and we'll do it again the same way each time. Is that about how it works? Like there's plants that grow in the wild, but for the most part, by the time they get to the grocery store, we've already develop how it should taste. And yeah, tell us a little bit more. I think I'm botching it, but
Mhm.
yes, can you tell us a little bit more about that
Okay,
process?
so prior to the banana that we eat now, the
Yeah.
Cavendish, there was another banana that was popular.
Mhm.
Pre the 1960s, and that was the Gros Michel, which is a variety that you can find throughout the Caribbean to this day. And it actually resembles the flavor of banana candy. This is where the flavor of banana candy actually comes from.
Mhm.
And then we had a Fusarium outbreak, or AKA the Panama disease, which basically wiped out this entire variety, this entire crop, and it basically bankrupted the banana market. So they needed to find another quick replacement, and the Cavendish was a Chinese cultivar. A Chinese cultivar was introduced, and it basically it's similar. Um, it's a similar group, but it's
Mhm.
really resistant to many things. So it just worked. So it's like they found something that produces fruit, it ripes slowly, and it grows fast, and it just works. So when it comes to having a industry like such as the banana industry, which generates billions and billions of dollars, you're thinking, okay, how
Yeah.
do I keep this particular industry stable? So it's not really, oh, I want this banana to taste great. It's like, okay, how can it make it to the shelves? Is the plant going to survive? How do I keep the money flowing?
Okay.
And when it comes to all these other varieties, a lot of these things ripen right on the plant or shortly after. So you can't ship these things as quickly as you can some of the varieties that are better for shelf life.
Got it. And yeah, I think that answers some of our questions that we saw in the chat about why we only seem to have one type of banana grown in the US is because those particular characteristics are the ones that have been bred to have the resilience, to be able to sustain the long shelf life and going across the seas to do to get to these different grocery stores.
Yeah,
It's
basically.
been bred to do that specifically. So if there is another type of disease that kills off the Cavendish, do we have any runner-ups?
Listen, I believe I believe they do. And
Yeah.
they, like I said, there's a lot of, I mean, right now there's a lot of threats to the banana industry, and there are
Mhm.
people around the world who basically dedicate their entire lives to basically mitigating those threats.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure what they're doing right now, but I just know that they are on it. They're on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And perhaps, there's some work being done with wild bananas, like with the
there
research
is.
that you're doing, right, to
Mhm.
improve the resilience of cultivated bananas.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's lots
We
of
have
breeders. There's lots of breeders. There's lots of
lots of,
people out here. Well, not, I wouldn't say lots, but
well,
there,
I mean, honestly, on our side of the world, on the grocery shopper side of the world, to know that there is a job called a banana breeder
or a
is,
horticulturalist, you know.
yeah, yeah, these are new things. These are new things for us. Let's go back to some of the things around people in culture, right? Are there any cultures that you visited in which bananas are the main source of nutrition?
Well, in Solomon Islands, for example, there was a paper that I had read back in 2018 or 19, and it was showing that when basically people were straying away from their traditional foods in the cities, and you
Mm,
start to get illnesses, various illnesses, and then they start to go back to their traditional foods, and then you start to realize how important beta carotene was for the diet, because
hmm,
the amount of beta carotene that was present in some of these bananas was just it's a powerful antioxidant, was just out of
wow.
this world, and basically these I can't remember exactly what the deficiency was, but basically it
Mhm.
all cured up when people started to just reintroduce the foods that their parents ate. Because you go to the
Wow.
cities, you start eating noodles and everything else, and you stray away
Yeah,
from what your parents are eating in the hills.
that's spectacular because what we're finding is the banana being the a wild fruit, like it looked like you had to go kind of deep into these forest areas to find it. So those who do that and they get to bring it back to the market, they get to benefit from local foods, have that nutritional value that's right there for the people, which we don't see as much
For
anymore.
sure.
Yeah, we don't see that as much anymore.
I also think
Did
eating
you?
ancestral foods is underrated. Like I think there
Yeah.
is something to eating the foods that your bloodline has been eating for generations.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There is a name for that. Oh gosh. Okay. It always slips my mind. And then after the program, I'm like, Eureka. But what one of the folks in the chat, they wanted to know, we see bananas as like chips and leather jerky and other forms. Did you encounter a form of banana that you just hadn't seen before?
Um, I haven't encountered it while traveling, but
Uh-huh.
I have seen many interesting things made from bananas. There are companies that, produce fibers. There are companies that produce leather. There are companies that
Wow.
produce all types of fuel. There's a place in Uganda where they're making briquettes, like charcoal for cooking instead of like deforestation. They're using banana scraps to make briquettes to basically cook their foods because the amount of
Yeah.
deforestation that takes place to make charcoal, you know,
Yeah.
is bad. So
Wow. And okay, so now that we've gotten a glimpse of what you have going on, because I totally understand that what you share with us today is a mere sliver of all of the wonderful things you have going on, the different travels. The focus on bananas is one major chapter of your travel log, but we know that there are other vegetables and other plants that you have really explored. So we look forward to hearing from you again and exploring and seeing the work that you have going on going forward. Now, what do you hope that people will consider when they encounter bananas in their day-to-day lives?
what I hope is that I mean, banana is just a catalyst for me.
Yeah.
I chose a banana because it's something that everybody knows what it is. You can, from a baby to an adult, everybody knows what a banana is. So I think it's a good catalyst to just get people looking at the immense diversity that nature has to offer. You can
Mhm.
really put this lens towards apples. You can put it towards carrots. You can put it towards pretty much anything. But it just wanted to really expose how deeply intertwined we are with the plant world and the food plant world, and how much diversity nature truly has to offer. And
Yeah.
also, I see someone in the chat, they keep asking, bananas are berries. Someone asks if bananas berries. They are
Oh,
berries. They're botanically considered berries because it produces a fruit with one ovule, I believe. Yeah, so they are bananas. They are berries.
bananas are berries.